Let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the award-winning podcast where we talk about gaining, fetishism, and everything plus size. Oh gosh, what am I today? You know what? I'm a sweaty bitch because it's a bit humid. James.
And I am Daria, gender bent and reincarnate in flesh.
And welcome to... No, we can't do that. That's probably too close to the punch. And welcome back to Thicc Radio. Yes, as we just said. And today we have with us none other than Roy Belzer. Ooh!
Well, hello. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we are excited to have you. And who are you today, Roy? Who are you feeling like today?
Who am I feeling like? Ooh, I'm trying to think of someone like thick and sassy, but no one is coming top of mind. I'm like 2019 era Lizzo today.
Very,
Yes.
very nice. Well, it's about damn time. Well, yes. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to say this right here. For anyone who is not familiar with Roy, you're thick. Go and sort that out because, well, I would hope you're thick. You're thick and juicy, girl, because Roy is just phenomenal. I mean, if you have not seen the curves and swerves, if you have not seen the power, the potency, the confidence of this gorgeous creature in front of us, you are truly missing out. I feel like if you subscribe to the Patreon and you see the video episode, you're going to know exactly who we're talking about because you have most certainly seen Roy somewhere on your social media feeds being just an absolutely fat menace to anyone who has a fucking stick up their ass about people of size. And I'd like to start off this interview by asking, Roy, how does that make you feel?
I first off obsessed with the descriptor Fat Menace. I had never heard that before, and I am obsessed. No. I'm feeling really good. Like you said, a fat menace to everyone who's being an asshole online, and it is the vibe, and we're here for it today.
Fabulous. Well, listen, for the sake of anyone who is not aware of you, hasn't come across you before, we're going to take it all the way back, right? Because we're going to talk about your content, who you are, the kind of spaces you occupy. But I think to give us a bit of context for this, I'd like to go back, all the way to that feeling of growing up, being in your body. I want to know, what was your relationship like with your body? What do you feel comfortable sharing with us on the podcast today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to start this off the same way I start off every podcast is inserting a little bit of a trigger warning for some of the content that I do talk about because it is a part of my journey at every station. Trigger warning surrounding eating disorders, specifically anorexia, bulimia, orthorexia, and just in general conversations around body image. But yeah, now that that is out of the way, we can talk about, sorry, what was it you started getting into before
No, that's
I
fine.
trigger warning?
Although it's like that sidebar thing, like, can I see you back here a sec? And it's just, I need to ask. I've not heard of orthorexia. Who is she?
Orthorexia, typically defined as an obsession with healthy eating and working out, but over excessively. So we know anorexia is the denial of calories coming in. Bulimia is calories coming out in, but you are purging them physically in some way, whether it be like making yourself throw up or through laxatives. And orthorexia is you're consuming but purging via caloric output, like overtraining in the gym. So that can be either like a big one for me. I used to be a long distance runner, slowly getting back into it. But excuse me, but I used to like punish myself with running. So that's how I got rid of all of the calories that I was consuming. So orthorexia is purging in a different way.
And that does kind of tie into, I think, the first question we'd want to ask, which is to take it back, right, and to talk to us about your experience in your body growing up. And from what you've just shared, it certainly sounds like you've had your own experiences with some of that size-related negativity that goes on in the world. And I wonder how much of that you'd be comfortable sharing with us today to give some context on, where you've been coming from with all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, growing up, all the way up until about my senior year of high school, I was in a larger body, and I was raised primarily by a single mother who was in a larger body the entire time that I knew her. She was much smaller before she had my younger brother and I. But growing up in a larger body with a mother who's also in a larger body, she was always on some kind of diet. And whether that was like working into kind of the keto space, but back then it was known more as Atkins. Um, Same shit, different name. Or whatever was really popular on the magazine that she would bring home every week. And I want to say it was called Woman's World magazine. It was one of those that was always on the end cap right as you were going to check out, but it always had those those cover pages that were like lose 27 pounds in 30 days. See how Rebecca did it. And it was always something like that. And it was always some kind of crash diet where you're cutting yourself down to like 1,200 calories a day and you're working out like twice a day. And it always drove me insane. But that is what I saw growing up. So those are kind of the habits that I learned because I watched my mother, go through it and work through that. And unfortunately, it was all I knew and all I could experience was seeing someone who I was mirroring and mimicking growing up and like beat themselves down every day with what they were seeing in the magazines and how they were treating their body. So sorry, that felt a little tangenty
No, that was,
there.
that actually made me think of something about my childhood because I was a very skinny child, right? But my dad went through this cycle like sometime in like middle school. I remember he wanted to bulk up at first, like because my dad, I guess, had been a skinny guy for most of his life. And then he bulked up, he worked out, he gained a lot of muscle, but then he wanted to really slim down because out of nowhere he decided he was going to be a cyclist. So, yeah, so like there were like he subscribed to all the fad diets because I remember the cabbage soup diet and I remember the house just reeking of that every time
Yep.
he went on it.
I forgot about the cabbage soup diet. There was this whole fad with cabbage at one point being like a quote unquote superfood, just because it was so low in calories that people would utilize it as like a volume substitute. So cabbage was really, really hot. In soups was a really big one. Cabbage instead of like burgers on bun or buns on burgers was a really big one as well. Leaning into like the wrap phase, and then where everyone was out ordering wraps all the time, and but they wanted a lettuce wrap or a cabbage wrap instead. And then the other big thing with cabbage that always grossed me out was sauerkraut. Excuse me. People were making a crazy amount of sauerkraut because it was, vinegar and cabbage, and that was about it. And so you're getting like 2 calories per serving. So people were just putting that on fucking everything. It was so gross. I do not care for the vinegar.
Mm. Good Lord. It reminds me, like when I was growing up, I come from a family who were always very, very thin, but we were also very, very poor. So we never had like the body struggle of like, how do we not eat or how do we eat like not great food? It was always more like there are too many children because we don't understand what contraception is. There's not enough to go around, and that's your natural portion control. But also, I remember weeknights at 6 p.m. That's when Fatties was on TV, as Mum would say. That was Biggest Loser. Come on, it's
Oh,
time to watch Fatties. And you wonder sometimes why some of the most innocuous and apparently innocent sounding statements just stick in your brain space for an eternity.
oh yeah, without question. And Biggest Loser is one of the like biggest contributors to my personal body image because we also watched it every time it came on. My mom was a big fan of the show, and I do remember sitting down and watching with her, and we always like watched it while we were having dinner, so it felt counterintuitive as well. watching these people like force themselves into different EDs, while we're sat there having a meal. But that's how we bonded, was watching shit like that on TV. So I definitely understand, where you're coming from with that. And I don't know if you guys ended up watching the Biggest Loser documentary that came out this last year. I want to say it was on Netflix. It was like a 3 episode special having conversations
Oh,
around.
was
I was
that
curious
Dirty
about
Rotten
it.
Scandals?
I don't remember what it was called.
Because
No, I think
I
it was
it
Fit for
might.
TV.
Oh, okay, got it.
Fit for TV. It was interviews with like former contestants, and
Mhm.
not to be that person, like the gainers have always kept an eye on the big, beautiful men who rebounded all of that weight that they lost. And it's always been a very common trope in discussion, right? That notion of they lost all this weight in a very particular environment and then they gained it all back. And in
Mhm.
tandem with that, all of the research in the past decade or so, where they realized, hey, guess what? Was your goal to make them skinny? You've absolutely actually fucked them because it's reset their metabolism now so that if they eat more than like what is it, 300, 400 calories a day, their bodies just store it as fat. Like, are you kidding me?
It's so wild, the things that happen to your body when you starve it. And I was just recently talking to someone else about this. So I went through my history with all 3 of those lovely eating disorders that I mentioned earlier: anorexia, bulimia, and orthorexia. And I have permanent alterations to my body just from being malnourished for such a long period of time that I won't be able to recover from those. And like one of the most notable ones that I personally get in my head about is my hair loss. I All of my hair loss is from when I wasn't consuming enough calories to fully function, and now those follicles are just dead and there. And so that's a really big one. I will never get the enamel back on my teeth from when I was purging. All that stomach acid wore away that bit of enamel. But yeah, it is just wild, the things that happen to your body when you refuse to actually, eat.
Mm.
You know.
Jamil Jamil talks about like her lack of bone density now. She's like, I could accidentally bump into a wall and break my arm. And that's
Mhm.
because years of purging, binging, not getting enough nutrients means that my bones are just fucked now.
Oh, 100%. That's a thing. And one of the only ways you can really combat that is making sure you're consuming enough calories and getting into resistance training and teaching your bones that they they need that structure again. And it's such a bitch to get started in, but so necessary
Well,
for
speaking
like.
of which, take us through that. Like, what initially made you want to operate in a fitness space?
I love this question. So as part of my recovery journey, getting out of my eating disorders, I decided that one of the biggest things that I wanted to do with like my recovery is help others learn to move their bodies in meaningful ways without hurting themselves. And so I decided to educate myself. I went back to school. My focus in school was biomedical engineering, and I slowly shifted into the physical fitness side of things. And now I primarily work with clients and patients who are coming out of the eating disorder space and wanting to learn intuitive eating. So I work very closely with like registered dietitians to refer people out with. And I wanted to take what I went through and have it be something that others can learn from as well. So kind of in that direction is where I ended up.
There's certainly a power of reclamation there, and I want to ask a question here in a second around ties with gaining, because that very much aligns with my journey. Like, full admission, yes, there's a strong sexual tone for me, as there is the majority of us here in this space, where like that's kind of what like starts us on this thought of like, oh, I would like to do this. But my own journey of actually experiencing size and growth has been incredible because I did not love myself in my slender body. I went through a lot of trauma growing up, and the actual journey of saying I have to like myself enough to not only eat enough, but to overconsume, to treat myself, to eat nicer foods I might actually like, and to enjoy my body as it grows, forced me to contend with the fact that, like, actually, I deserve to be here and not only take up space, but take up more space. And it's been
Mhm.
such an incredible facet of my mental health journey, not just like the physical reflection looking back at me and going, oh my God, I like this, but also, oh my God, I am filled. I feel more present as a human operating
Mhm.
in this larger body. So, to people who sometimes wonder, like, why we like to bring people on the pod who are from outside of the community space, it's because there's more to the body journey and the body experience of affirmation than just, oh, it make pee pee hard. Like, there is so much more, and there is a lot of power and potency. And clearly, with, I'm going to say, the success you've had with your brand and the way in which people interact with you online, clearly there are a lot of people who resonate with that. But I do want to ask the obvious question. I imagine that because of your size, you get people who wonder if you're a gainer. Hmm. Are you a gainer?
I am not a gainer.
You're not.
Um,
Oh, that's perfectly
I
fine.
know. One of the biggest reasons that I wanted to come on the podcast was as a bit of an educational experience for myself as well.
Hmm.
Because I don't know as much about that community as I could, and I do get a lot of questions fairly often online because I am someone who works in the fitness world, but am also very happy and content in a larger body. Whether or not I am a gainer, whether or not I train people in the gainer space. So yeah, it's always so fascinating to see where kind of the crossover happens and where assumptions happen as well, which is always, you know, a welcome set of questions, and a fascinating world to be in.
For sure. And I think that curiosity is honestly the most important part. I mean, I would never besmirch anyone who does or does not want to do something because, like, what do I care? If it's a no-go, it's a no-go. But I like that notion that it's a willingness to learn and that you might have questions that you want to ask. So, I mean, let's open up the floor here. Do you have something on your mind where it's like, oh, what's that kind of first level question that you're like, I'd like to know a little bit more about that when it comes to that subject matter?
I think the first thing that comes to mind, especially as someone who spent years, like on the other side, like aspiring to be as thin as possible, where do you find the allure to make yourself larger?
It varies from person to person. Sometimes it's an aesthetic that they've always been attracted to and, or they've always wanted it in themselves. Like so many members of our community, like remember as children that they would like stuff their clothing to look bigger. Um, and then there are like people like me, like I didn't always want to be a gainer myself. I just knew that I liked fat men and I always was attracted to that. And there was just always something about. And then when I discovered the idea that fat men may potentially want to get even fatter, well, that just kind of cinched the thing for me because it's always been present. I can't pinpoint the origin, but as far back as my memories go, it's there.
A little bit of the same here. Like, Roy, do you mind my asking, how old are you?
Sure. In 2 weeks, I'll be 34.
The reason I ask is because you and I, similar age, the 90s, there were a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies where weight gain in some way, shape, or form became the trope of the week. It became the source of contention or the narrative for resolution. And because I existed purely in a skinny body, my whole family was skinny, larger bodies were therefore the most different thing that I was really seeing on TV at the time. And so I assumed my little brain just went, ooh, big difference. I like that. That's interesting. And whenever there would be tropisms around fatness, it would always be, fun sound effects, bouncing, boing, and, you know, the inferences of people being soft and cuddly and warm and affectionate, which is also why there's like a specific Santa trope with some gainers as well. They call themselves Santa sexuals. I call them ho ho homosexual. Um, but there's for many people a sense of allure in terms of there's the positive idea of what that person could be. And again, when I reflect on my own like lived experience, there was a lot of like restrictive eating without my consent. There was a lot of like not having had. Whereas the depictions of people who were larger was always, they always have enough to eat and they always have very delicious food and they always seem to have a lot of fun and there's a lot of humor. And that painted a much more positive image of a lived life than perhaps the one that I was living as a young person. So it's probably another reason why psychologically the weight gain experience has really been affirming in me and made me go like, oh, life is just better fatter.
I think for me too, it's also the like it's the expression of their masculinity. Like I don't care how cut a Calvin Klein model is. I don't care if you can count his ribs, his abs, his spinal protrusions. Like I don't fucking care. Like to me, a man is,
Mm.
you know, big, hairy, ball-gutted. Like, and you could just chalk that up to like, oh well, you're just attracted to bears. But because I'm willing to go into upper weight limits, because some people would like, oh, I'm into bears, but I wouldn't date anybody over 300 pounds. Whereas I don't have that limit.
Which also is part of the crossover between gainers and bears, and why some people sometimes blur lines. And there's questions about very proud, big-bellied bears in the world who get hit on by gainer encourager types because, sometimes that Venn diagram is looking more like a circle. Sometimes there's a lot more crossover than people realize. Um, but also, yeah, just big men is beautiful. Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
I was gonna say, I just a couple of things on there. First, I think it's really fascinating that some of your desire to be kind of in that gainer space and world is mentally from a food scarcity background. Not to bring it back into like a food space, that's my background. But like you coming from a food scarcity space and seeing someone with a collection of abundance as something to aspire to, I think that makes 1,000% sense. So that makes all the sense in the world. Also, I only in the last like 5-ish years have been in a larger body as an adult. Everything pre-pandemic, I was either straight sized or underweight as an adult. So I would consider my time in the bear community is much fresher, newer. So I'm still learning a lot about like where different subcategories within the bear world exist and how people identify differently, even within the community, I think is really, really fascinating. It's cool to learn about like all the different spaces and where crossover happens and who finds who welcoming. And it's been really interesting being on that journey over the last couple of years of being in a larger body as an adult.
Mm. I mean, there are certainly plenty of people who hear about gaining and fetism and to some extent have an idea, usually based off of the typical media that gets shown, the stuff that's very salacious and negative, and so they have this idea of it. But then they might encounter someone who's just out here living the life and having a good time with it, and then they go, oh, this actually seems a lot more chill. We've said this before, sort of jokingly. I don't denigrate other kinks and fetishes that have other needs and things that go on, but some kinks involve you having to be set on fire with gasoline and have you hacked off at the elbow. I just want you to feed me a bit of cake as you fuck me. Like on the level of, feasibility, working it into existing sexual structures. I think what we've got going on is probably a lot more low key than what some of that,
That's why we find it
you
so
know.
galling, the systemic fat phobia that keeps people thinking that this is some little dirty, gross secret that people have, because like James was saying, we just want to eat food and increase our size. Whereas as a person who's in the BDSM community, I know people who like some really kinky shit done to them. I know people who like to be fisted. I know people who like to be set on fire. I know people who like to be whipped, spanked of all designations and whatnot. So like I think in comparison, being a gainer is quite vanilla.
I will say, like, I count myself as a fairly vanilla person just in general. And over the last couple of years of being single, I have been, for the most part, fairly celibate. I have a couple of like instances where I did go out and have a hookup here and there. But had exactly one situation where I hooked up with someone who is a part of the gator community, and that wasn't disclosed prior to us hooking up. And it was a little bit triggering for my eating disorder stuff because
Talk
it
about it.
wasn't disclosed. We it was actually on my birthday last year, so almost a year ago.
Oh my goodness.
I I'd gone on like 2 or 3 dates with this guy, and he was nice enough. We just like it wasn't a match, and that was fine. And I came around to my birthday and I was home alone. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna treat myself. And ended up he lives like 2 blocks away. So I ended up walking over to his place and we decided to get into the throes of things. And while he was blowing me, if this is too explicit, let me know.
No, baby, please, please. This is
Okay.
what that's for.
Perfect. Okay. While he was blowing me, he like started rubbing on my belly and started like talking about it and it was all very positive stuff. It was all, very crazy and I was very here for him experiencing the sexual needs he needed, but it was not where I was at mentally that day. If I had known that that was what he was into and that was what he needed sexually, it would have been an incredibly different experience. But he did not know my background with my eating disorder, so um, I also can't count it as a negative that he didn't disclose his desires as well. So we both had needs that were not expressed. And then things happened and I was in my head about it. So
But as you say, it was amicable that you guys just decided to stop seeing each other, right?
yeah, we only went on like 3 dates.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, like it's the hesitancy that people in our community have to disclose it is based on, like how can I articulate this properly? So like let's say a member of our community is an encourager, which generally tends to mean like a thinner, smaller guy who's into bigger guys. It doesn't always mean that, but that's kind of like what you generally get. And he has decided that he only wants to date larger people, right? Like he just can't gel with anyone his own size, so he wants to be with larger people. Generally the spaces he's going to have to look in are the chub scenes, and chub chasing is kind of a world on its own. It's got a lot of its own problems. There's a lot of shit that happens in the chub chaser community, but like that's going to be his general dating pool. And there is a real skittishness in the chub community about gainers. Because a lot of the men who are big, I'm not trying to say that they are sad to be big, but they
No,
kind
but
of
like they didn't
there's
get big on purpose,
they
right?
didn't get
And
big
like,
on purpose, and they a lot of them have difficulty with the fact that they grew up chubby, and
okay,
that it's
I'm gonna
always been
say
a
this, right?
struggle.
This is the reality that these types of conversations always need to preface. All of this, whether it's gainer, chub, accidental fat, whatever your entryway and your personal relation to sizedness, it don't matter. Any fucked upness stems from the fact that society says that to be fat and to exist as fat is bad. That is the beginning, middle, and end of it.
Yeah,
Because the reality is, for me to want to be bigger and to experience joy and pleasure in being bigger, no matter who that is with, is not inherently a wrong or a bad thing. Same thing with chasers wanting someone who's big, encourager phenotypes wanting to find someone to make bigger, people who are in larger bodies finding people who are going to appreciate them regardless of that size. We're all looking for the same thing ultimately, which is some kind of good vibe in this larger direction, right? Regardless of the motivation. And the reason why there's all the clammishness that happens is because ultimately so many of us are still wrestling with the effects of fat equal bad. Whether that is something they are experiencing in themselves, other people are experiencing for themselves, that's where that tension comes in.
which
You
is
know,
really hard for people like us to reconcile, because like when we see a large man like that, like we want to worship him. We want him to feel as
oh yeah,
beautiful
baby.
as we think he is.
I want to just get
And
all up and
there is
in all of
nothing
that.
sexier than a big boy who just has like, how people always say confidence is sexy. Confidence in
Confidence
big
is
people is
sexy.
sexy as fuck.
And now we
A
see
big
this
boy
wave
who
of
just
people
owns
online,
his
you know,
size and
the modern push of I'm big and I'm sexy and I'm worth it. That is catnip to the people because they look and they go, oh, I'd like me a little piece of that, or maybe a not so little piece. Um, but you're absolutely right. Like acknowledging is so important there. Like you did not disclose your situation, he didn't disclose his. It's a classic instance of like, oh, we missed each other because of we're all trying to operate in a way that is probably trying to also think about being respectful to ourselves and to other people. In the moment, you're probably not thinking about disclosing body stuff because you're like, I'm here to get pleasure. I don't really want to talk about my traumas right now. That's not the vibe. And for him, he's probably sitting there thinking, I can't make it about gaining, but I want to make it about like the positivity and think if there's like that positive reflection. And if anything, it just points to the fact that more of us need to have more thorough conversation and to be open to whatever the response to that is. Like for me, I operate purely on Scruff these days, but my profile is all gainer. It's the belly pictures, it's the before and afters. I disclose all that. And I'm very honest with people. I'm probably not going to message first because I'm really not interested in anybody with an attitude being weird with me because I'm a gainer. I'm not interested in that. I'm here to be me and I'm here for those experiences, which means if that's you, you come this direction. You let me know that shit's cool because I'm good. I need you to let me know that you're good because far too many people be crazy. But then from there, fabulous. I've had so many positive interactions with people, whether it's instances of sex, online role play chat, or even just people who are like, I've always been kind of curious to know. Something in the atmosphere that says, hey, 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 we're safe, we're cool, helps everyone just like, calm, ease on into the fullness, literally and metaphorically, of whatever it is we're about to get into.
No, absolutely. And I will say, I have recently seen him on the apps, whichever ones they are right now. I don't know. We've all got like nine of them, but he has updated and changed all of his profiles to be very exactly what you just described for your own scruff, where he has very like gainer positive stuff, and I'm very here for that. Had I seen that beforehand, like we would have been just fine.
just as a general rule of thumb to anyone who's watching or listening, just be honest on your profiles. Like I know it seems scary. I know. I get it. I everyone has the anxiety about being honest about themselves, but just it works out better.
It's so boring to not get what you want. Like all of us in the community have had that experience of having to like, because you think to yourself, this is my moment, this is my opportunity, and I have to stamp on this down. But you know good and goddamn well you're not going to have as much fun. You're not going to enjoy yourself as much because you know what you really, really want, and you're allowed to want what you want. Just being honest means like, hey, maybe I don't have as many opportunities with as many random individuals, but also, like I said, since I re-downloaded Scruff and I made that my vibe, I have had 100% great experiences. So I have nothing to complain about. Everybody just be honest. Do that.
Honestly, though, and I don't know that I mentioned my eating disorder stuff on the apps, like in my profile, because that feels a little odd to put there, but I do bring it up in a first date situation. I just in general am more demisexual, so if we're hooking up, there will be dates first. At least a mocktail before anything happens in a bedroom. Um, like I know myself now, that's where I'm at. It's a whole thing. So I will disclose on said first date my ED history background. Um, it feels like a slightly odd thing to put in my profile. I'm also like 3% famous, so I don't put any of my socials on my like Scruff or Grinder. And half the time I feel like if I'm on someone's profile and they have their Instagram linked, it always goes to a private fucking Instagram, which drives me bonkers. Like, why is this linked
Like, girl,
here
what's the
if it's
point?
not right?
What's the
Like,
fucking point? Also, not to be that person, because obviously, like, we're public facing, we have public profiles, like, you can see what Tim and I do on the individual level.
mhm.
I'm just going to let you know this. We had someone very recently say, hey, I'd love to be on the show, but, I'm a little bit worried about showing my face and I don't really want to do all this. And we just had to be like, then it's a no, dog. Be-
And
c-
that's
c-
okay.
and it's okay that you don't want to do that, but also, like, baby, like in order to be in a space of like, and I'm not saying like this is the same equivalent of what you're doing. Although I love the 3% thing, what does that make you like semi-skim famous? Like with the special, like, like with the special cap in the dairy section. Is that what you're working with?
Absolutely that. No,
Oh my
I
God.
don't know. I never know how to describe it. All of my friends have this inside joke that I'm like 3% famous because I'm like in large magazines now and I've been on billboards and I've done, this, that, and the other. And I'm in a movie that's coming out next year, like a major box office one. So I'm
You were in
like,
the Ellie Baez music video.
I love El
Oh my
Baez. I
goodness.
was in her music video. Yep.
That was an incredible song. We'll talk about that in a minute. I feel like we could dish it was so good. But no, like I love that you reference that because I've had people be like, "Oh, because you're trying to be the influencer now," and I'm like, "Well, no." But also like, am I? Like at what? Like I've got 6.5 roughly thousand people. Like is that enough? Is that enough to qualify myself as some form of known in a space? How does one reference this without sounding like a self-obsessed asshole? And I don't think it's possible. I think the only way through it is to just like state it as honestly to be like, yeah, I'm like known in a limited space.
Yeah, I was like, every time I go out to a gay bar, I get recognized,
Hmm.
which is a lovely problem to have, especially because recently I was looking at my analytics. When I very first got started online, it was like mostly thirsty gay men who
Mhm.
followed me, but now I'm closer to like 90% female identifying people follow me.
Mhm.
And I think it's because I was posting a lot more accessible fitness stuff and a lot less thirst traps.
Mm.
But I just hosted a retreat here in Philly. And one of the people on the retreat was this like 63, 64-year-old woman. And we were talking about like content I post and who I post it for. And she was like, I promise, like, even those of us who are not gay men, appreciate your little thigh shake you do in some of your videos. I was like, okay, so I can add in like a splash of thirst again, and it'd be fine. It's always
Abs-
like a fun, like, where am I towing the line situation.
Right. We honestly we have this with the pod because like we were just kind of talking about before, gaining for so many people is like a sex through line. But clearly I live in this body 24/7 and I don't have my hard dick out right now. So like I must be able to function as a fat in the world and be normal. So like how do you express the thing in such a way that people don't then feel like we're trying to angle towards something or try to find like a toe over the line. Sometimes it's very that. It's very that.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask something actually, because we're talking about your fitness, and I feel like it's good to get into your content a little bit here. I want to ask the question, what does fitness look like for someone whose goals may not actually involve weight loss?
So I something to remember about fitness. Fitness is not a look. At no point is fitness how you look. Fitness is always going to be a measurable piece of success. You can measure it in how much you're lifting, how far you're running, how long you can stand at your job. Are you able to get off the floor on your own? Fitness is always going to be a measurable metric that you can look into. And for everyone, it's going to look a little bit different. So a lot of my clients come from some kind of injury or are people who just want to be able to function in their everyday life without pain. A lot of my background is in pre and post physical therapy rehabilitation. So I work with a lot of people who are missing limbs or are starting to move their body for the very first time in their life. So fitness for those two different people is going to look incredibly different depending on what they want to accomplish. One of my clients just said that their next big goal is to run a full marathon, and I'm obsessed with that for them. Another one of my clients last week said that their goal is to be able to um, tie their shoes from without having to sit down to do it. Absolutely a valid fitness goal, and is an aspect of fitness without it being running a marathon. So fitness looks different on everyone, but it's always a measurable goal and not how you look. Sorry if that was
No, that's good. And do you think that the industry, because fitness is an industry, is capable of evolving to the point, that that it accommodates for people who want to gain or maintain their weight, or is it always going to be that it's just going to be like the moral high ground here is the weight loss?
I feel like we're in a weird step back right now in the fitness industry where we are back to creating heroes out of weight loss with the rise in Ozempic, Mounjaro. All of the GLP-1s are bringing back what they called heroin chic. Um, and this will bring us back to our conversation we were having earlier about like bone density, because so many people who are going through a major weight loss uh with whatever GLP-1 they're on, the biggest struggle right now is bone density, because people aren't eating enough calories and they're not doing the resistance training that they need to maintain the bone density that they're losing from being malnourished. And with people in these teeny tiny bodies being raised up again, I feel like we're moving away from the functionality is fitness space,
Hmm.
See,
unfortunately.
that just makes me want to be a gainer all the more. Social rebellion. Like,
Yeah,
y'all want to be you can do whatever the hell you want with your body, but if everyone wants to walk around with the heroin chic coming back, I'm gonna be the slob, and I will take your abuse, but I know that I am gonna eat well tonight.
and we
Yeah.
talk about that. Like, gaining is inherently political because not only am I saying I'm intentionally getting larger, I am eschewing this cultural obsession with thinness, and as we found out, pedophilia, which it's all fucking tied to with Mr. Epstein and everything like that. So not only is it anti all of that, it's also just like I am experiencing joy and pleasure. Like, I'm not just doing it for the sake of saying, like, fuck you. I'm also being like, fuck you, but also pass the seconds. Like, pass me the gravy because, bitch, that's tasty. That's delicious. And, like, there is something so genuinely freeing. Like, when you think about the struggles of the world in your general day to day, sometimes you really have to fight to find, like, pockets of joy in everywhere you can. And, like, the vibe I get from people who've experienced disordered eating is like, that's where it kind of comes from because the pocket of joy you find is in secretly eating the treat and going, oh, well, I'll have this, and like that's gonna keep me going, and then it becomes like that little secret thing. Whereas with gaining, it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna just have that because fuck you, I'm never gonna be able to afford a house, so I'm gonna just buy Chipotle. Like, give it to me, give it to me, and I will have the trimmings, and I'll have all the things I want, and I'll have sides and seconds. Fuck you, and yes, I will look at the dessert menu. Thank you very much. Like there is something very like, I will not be denied the joy of my human existence embedded into the gaining experience, you know?
Yeah, it has been fascinating just on my recovery process, going from a place of um, the thought being, oh, the size of my body is the single thing within my control, so I'm going to control it to be as small as possible, to being okay with consuming food and then hearing the other side of it, the size of my body is something I can control. Um, in this like awful world we're living in. So I'm going to have it be bigger than it was before. That it's so interesting seeing like that shift and transition from where I was mentally to hearing where you guys are at. So I love that.
Now, I'd like to ask about your retreats because you had mentioned before that you'd recently finished a retreat, and I'd like to inquire about them because I feel like, full disclosure, people be saying shit online. People be
Okay.
saying shit like, I run retreats, and I'm sat here like, what the fuck is that? What is a retreat? What do you do on said retreat? Is there homework? Like, what is a retreat? And so let me put that to,
You
sorry, yes,
remember that
Tim,
episode of Ab Fab? You
which one?
haven't got the talking stick. Well, how
Oh,
much
you
is the
haven't got,
stick? I'll buy the
I'll
stick.
buy the talking stick, you bastard. Yes. Sorry, Roy, are you a are you an Ab Fab fan by any chance?
I've never seen it, but everyone says I need to watch it, that it is very my humor.
It's
Um,
fantastic. You simply need to accept that some of the humor is of its time, and that is okay. Once you
sure.
accept it, you can absolutely ride with it. It's fantastic. Um, but please tell us about your retreats in particular. What are they about? What do you do? Where do you go? What happens? Who's going? Tell me everything.
Yeah, for sure. I just finished one here in Philly. Philly is where I live. For those who don't know, I am an East Coast girly. Um, but I spent 3 years traveling full time without a home, and that's kind of what pushed me into hosting these retreats. I'll go in kind of on the Philly one as an example because that's fresh on my mind. I just did it. Um, all of my retreats, for the most part, are 5 days, 4 nights. We share upscale accommodations. We have a little bit of homework. We do have some journaling that we do. And I will actually go over what the opening night journaling prompts are so that you can have a better feel for them. Um, if I didn't lie to you. Oh, here we go. So the first thing I ask everyone for them to write in their journal is, why did you sign up for the trip? Number two is, what is something that you're excited for on the trip? A lot of people will write something about like something they want to see in whatever city that we end up in. Philly was my seventh retreat, and I'm gearing up for my eighth one now, and I have my next seven already planned and launched. Um, Number three is, what's something physical that you want to work on during this trip? And that can be, I want to walk a lot further than I'm typically able to, or I want to learn how to squat in my body. I want to learn what slowing down looks like for me. It just kind of depends. Number four is, how are you going to show love to your body this week? And this is a question that I'm always so interested to see the different answers in, because for everyone, it's a little bit different. Like I just had someone on the Philly retreat say they weren't going to deny themselves dessert on this trip. And I was like, okay, I love that for you. This is a step towards allowing that as something in your life. Love that. Number five is, what does body empowerment mean to you? And this is a really big one that we talk about the first night, and then we revisit again on the last night after we've spent a week having open discussions on conversations around our relationship with our bodies, with food, etc. Um, and then the last question I ask everyone is, what do you think might get in your way while you're on the retreat? So just a nice set of questions. And for some people, they'll answer, "Oh, I'm the one thing that's getting in my own way on this trip. Oh, I've got work things that are stressing me out. Oh, I don't know if I physically can keep up with everyone on this trip." It all kind of depends on the person. So we do goal setting and intention setting the first night. We do different excursions throughout the week. So here in Philly, we did um, the Philadelphia Art Museum. We did a tattoo outing where everyone got tattoos. We did the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall. We went out to King of Prussia, the second largest mall in America. We did a bunch of stuff out and about throughout the city. We had a karaoke night, a musical theater piano night, all kinds of exploring outside of the facility with everyone. We have, like I was saying, open conversations around our relationships with food and movement and our relationships with our body. So it's always a safe space for people to participate in those conversations. If they're not conversations that you want to have, you are always welcome to excuse yourself. You are not required to be in any of those moments. You don't have to go on any of the excursions if they're not what you're looking for. It is your trip, so it's what you make of it kind of situation too. Um, we always do a body empowerment photo shoot as well, where we'll go out and we'll talk about what you experienced throughout the week, what you wrote down in your journal. We'll talk about what you wanted to accomplish with this. Sometimes these are like joyous and exciting photo shoots. Sometimes people cry during their photo shoots because they're able to actually talk through what they're experiencing in a safe place for the first time in their lives. I've had a couple of people come along and it ended up being a gender affirming care photo shoot. So I hosted a retreat last year in Rehoboth in Delaware, and we had a trans man attending. And this is his first time ever having photos done post transition. So he had an opportunity to see himself in a masculine way where he'd never seen himself before. So having these photo shoots are always incredibly important to me, regardless of what people are needing to get out of it. But having an opportunity to see yourself through the eyes of a stranger is always kind of cool. So, but yeah, I've been hosting these retreats for a couple of years now, and the people that typically show up, I have a lot of bears show up to my retreats. And then I have a lot of moms come on the trips too, which I was never expecting, but it happens. And a wild amount of nerdy bisexuals on my trips, which is great because I am also a nerdy bisexual. So found my people.
I was about to say that feels like the perfect middle ground. Bears, mums, and then nerd bisexuals. It's like somewhere in the middle of all that. That's great. That
Yeah.
sounds fantastic. I'll take an invite. I'd like to go. That sounds phenomenal. I'd love to see what goes on at the retreat, girly. But no, that genuinely sounds really quite nice. Like there's an open opportunity for no matter who you are, where you're at, what's going on, freedom of opportunity to kind of just like let it all out. Like in life, the majority of people probably do hold into themselves like what they experience and really think and feel about so many things, especially regards their bodies. And so it just sounds like an opportunity that if you want to, scream. And if you want to, sing and jump for joy and do whatever. That sounds fantastic. I'd like to go on one where we go to a rage room. That'd
I
be fun.
love the idea of a rage room, and we haven't done it on a trip yet. But I'm always looking for new opportunities for people to have outlets to do shit like that. So I'm very here for that idea. And
Absolutely.
I mean, also to your point, you were just talking about where people have an opportunity for community. So much of what I'm doing is because of within eating disorders, and I'm sure within the gainer community as well. There's such a sense of isolation when you're not talking about it and don't have community to reach out to. So having opportunity to create the community where people feel safe is such a big part of why I do what I do with these trips, because it is so isolating to work through all your shit on your own.
And I'd be curious. This is maybe a bit of a heavier question, but social media can be pretty brutal towards content creators that are large. So how do you deal with haters?
That's so real. And I get more than most when it comes to hate on my videos. And to the point where I've had to um I had to block a client from seeing my comments on my videos because
Oh
they were a
gosh.
problem for his mental health.
My
Um,
gosh.
but with all the hate I get, at the end of the day, it will never be as bad as the hate that I put on myself when I was at my worst with my
Mm,
ED.
yeah,
And these people, every time they comment, are raising my engagement. And I get in front of the people who do need to see what I'm putting out there. So
absolutely.
I do a lot of bite back with it too, where I'll utilize someone's really shitty comment and then I'll do something fucking outrageous in the video. I do a lot of um like dance work on Bosu balls, and it pisses off so many fragile men.
Because they have to see you wobbling. And again, obviously there are some people who look at that and we're just screaming,
And
yes!
yeah, and you know what
It fills us
the
with
dudes that have
joy.
a problem with it are the dudes that look like you but can't do the same thing that you do. That's why they're pissed because they got the same type of body, but they can't do the kind of shit you can do.
Literally though.
it's also gay shit in general. You know what I mean? Like, girl, let's just talk about it for a second here. Like, faggots love to not support faggots. They love to be like, oh, you think you're so special just because you have talent and something to say. I also am gay, but I don't have anything, so fuck you.
And you know what? I blame Perez Hilton for that. I totally blame Perez Hilton for that because he tried to make it normal to just be gay and that's your personality and that's your career, just being a fag.
Yeah, but there's so much more. So much more. When I was coming on this podcast, I was this is like I've done over like 100 podcast guest spots at this point.
Hmm.
So talking on camera, it feels very natural to me. However, almost every one of those podcasts I've talked on have specifically been about like history with eating disorder stuff. And so I was a little nervous coming on here. I was like, oh my God, I have to talk about things that aren't just that. Um, so it's kind of exciting to have opportunity to talk about other things.
Well, let me put this to you here. What would you say is like the number one thing that you don't normally get to talk about that if we were to just like give you the floor,
Ugh.
what would you want to talk about? Like this is your moment.
Oh my God. I honestly, I don't even know at this point. Like, I, one of the big things that I'm working on this year, is leaning hard into hobbies and all the hobbies that have built me, all the hobbies that bring me joy, and new hobbies that I haven't experienced yet are really high on my list of prioritizing right now. Last year, I went through a really rough bout with my depression. There were a lot of like suicidal thoughts and ideations. So I'm leaning into joy this year. And I just made a list of like 75 different hobbies that I'm going to make a video series about of things to like try. And while I was going through those, I think what I'm most excited about is getting back into music and doing work in theater. I used to do musical theater and opera, and a little bit of choral work, like for work. And it's been quite a while. I was consistently doing it for work about 9 years ago when I lived in Chicago. But I've only done one show since then, and it was about a year ago. And it was interesting getting back into the space, specifically because it was my first time performing in a larger body. And I was playing one of the leads in White Christmas. And so I had like a love interest role too. And my scene partner, she weighed about as much as my left thigh. She was so tiny. And but she was such a phenomenal talent and dancer. But I was so in my head about how I was going to look in my big ass next to this teeny tiny woman. But working with her and working with the choreographer, we made it work so well. And there were no questions amongst anyone in the audience about whether or not we would be romantically compatible. It was just all kind of in my head about my size and how I'm perceived and how I'm presented on stage. And I don't know why I was in my head about that because I'm constantly seeing couples who are in wildly different body types, and it's always so like beautiful and exciting, um, that it should have just already been a reality in my head. It just wasn't because it was me in that space. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Totally. I mean, gainers experience this all the time. Like for me, I am 100 pounds heavier than I was when I first started this shit. And so for me, I know I am egregiously fatter than what I was once upon a time. And yet, when I see people online looking so much larger in so many ways and going out and having fun, I get in my head where it's like, oh gosh, I think I'm too small. Maybe I shouldn't bother posting this week. Maybe I'm not big enough right now. I think that sense of dysmorphia and that sense of not enoughness can get into all of us, no matter what direction we're trying to go into. We're all of us dealing with a little bit of internalized something or other, you know? And I think it's always going to catch you out because most of us don't live lives in which we are encouraged to really plumb ourselves. We're encouraged to think about, the world in which things are happening, which is why we find it so easy to judge others because we don't want to have to think about judging ourselves. And then, of course, our mind does that trick on us. Like, I know what it means to hate me. I know exactly what that looks like when I start hating me. Except your brain loves to catch you catch 22 when it brings in the new thing and then you don't know what it's doing and then it happens and then you go, oh, it's happening again, but in a different thing. Like, I think it just kind of gets everyone. And we always think of like the quote unquote cure to the negativity. We think of that kind of stuff in a very linear way. Like, I've been through this before. I should be able to identify this. I should be over this by now. Nah, bitch, sometimes the brain just decides today you're sad about it again. It's been 20 years, but today you're sad. Cry, bitch. And then you got no choice. You just gotta let the tears flow. So, like, gratitude, I think if you're struggling to like comprehend the joys in your life, but otherwise like love and grace to yourself first is always like solve number one. Just like, no, 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 we love ourselves. We're going to be kind today. We're allowed to have a down day and it's okay.
I have this interesting thing I was thinking about while you were talking. So slightly off topic, where we were talking about like self-perception and body image, size, and when you were talking about not sure if you were like big enough to like go out and be in these spaces and exist. I think I'm at an interesting place with my body dysmorphia where I in my regular life, day to day, I surround myself with a fair amount of larger people just in general. Like I'm very in with the bears right now, and everyone who I like count as a peer really they are typically in a larger body and work in fitness. And when I see all of my friends who are like bears, they are all like 6'6" and have a good 100 pounds on me. They are like beefy gentlemen. And so when I am looking at my own videos online, I'm like, I don't see myself as like that big online because of the people who I surround myself with in my like regular day-to-day life. But I was thinking about how all of the people who are leaving me shitty comments are perceiving me because in the fitness space, I am a big guy. Like, um, I just don't see that because that's not the content I'm bringing in. It's not the people I'm spending time around. So I spent like 3 seconds looking through like regular Instagram and not just my curated feed. I went to my like backup account and looked through like a regular feed, and um, I do not look like the other men who work in the fitness space for the most part. Oh, it's interesting the what you were talking about with perception and who we're around versus how we see ourselves.
Oh yeah. And that just kind of brings back to the whole like fat isn't real. Like it's a metaphysical property on the human body, but like the definition of like someone who is fat is entirely contextual. Because like you say, next to all the other guys in the fitness industry, people probably look at you and think, oh, enormous. But then next to half the bears and the big guys who might want to spend some time with you, you probably look all dainty and petite. So like nothing means anything and everything is a flat circle. It's a fruit bar, it's a wagon wheel, it means nothing at all, really. Um, but speaking of fruit bars and wagon wheels, I'd like to ask you a question, Roy. I'd
Okay.
like to know what food brings you life and what food gives you peace?
Ooh. Okay, so my favorite food, what brings me life, is this is gonna sound silly. Blueberries. I just love blueberry everything. If I'm looking for a snack, I will go to the pint of fresh blueberries in my fridge. I'm working on growing a blueberry bush. I just really, really enjoy blueberries. I always have. And it could be in like a really decadent scone. It could be just a handful of the berries. And then the food that brings me comfort. Right? You said comfort? Yeah. Okay. The food that brings me comfort is a Southern recipe from my grandmother, and it's chocolate gravy and biscuits. I don't know if you guys have heard of chocolate gravy and
I mean,
biscuits.
certainly gravy and biscuits, just not chocolate. So I assume that it's a chocolate sauce poured over like a sugar dumpling or like donut.
So it's like regular biscuits, but it is a chocolate sauce, the consistency of gravy. You will put a little butter on your biscuit and then just pour the sauce over top and have it like that. Chocolate gravy and biscuits. It's really big in like Texas and Arkansas. And my family's from Arkansas, or at least my mom and beyond were from Arkansas. I grew up in the Midwest though. But yeah, that's my little comfort food is chocolate gravy and biscuits. I haven't had it in a couple of years though. Oh,
Mm,
but it's very tasty. It's very decadent. It's very like rich. So it's not what I want all the time.
James can
okay.
tell you his biscuits and gravy story and the extra helpings. And, you know, as a way to wrap up the conversation today, what do you hope conversations around fatness, attraction, and fitness are going to look like, you know, let's say 10 years from now?
Ooh, that's a big question. Um, I'm really hoping that we find a touch of stasis with the GLP-1 obsessions that are happening right now so that we can move past that being a new standard, this like skeletal being standard that's happening right now. The conversations I've had around bodies in um bodies in cinema right now is a lot. I try not to comment on people's bodies just as a general rule. Um, but I'm really hoping that we hit a point of stasis and that we start moving back to where fat bodies are no longer vilified and are just existent in the public eye. And so that societally we can stop having fat be a bad word. I feel like we can get there. I feel like it's gonna take a lot of work, but I feel like we can get there. Um, because if fat is no longer a vilified word, then fat and fitness are no longer going to be butting heads and they can just coexist.
Y'all, this has been a great episode, Roy. I just want to say a massive thank you for giving of your time to be with us today. Where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, this has been great. If anyone wants to find me, I am on all social media, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook as at Roy Belzer Fitness. And then my website is just roybelzerfitness.com. So you can find me in all of those places.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Well, listen, y'all, that is a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and please leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram at thiccymouse and Grommr at Orpheus.
And you can also find us on social media at Thicc Radio or visit our website at thiccradio.com.
Consider supporting the show by donating to our PayPal or by subscribing to our Patreon, where you can enjoy extra helpings, a behind-the-scenes conversation with this week's guest where nothing is off the table.
And if you send us a letter to thiccradio@gmail.com, we might just read it on the show. That's all for now. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is an independent production.
Artwork, media design, editing, and production by James Heinzen.
With original theme music by CYMK.
It felt good. I felt like I rambled a little bit. I feel like you can rein me in post.